Ohio State's quickly made an impact on multiple five-star recruits in the 2026 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, here on Thursday, August 8th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. During today's episode, Brian Smith, who is Locked On's recruiting analyst, is back with us once again. Brian and I dive into the recruitments of multiple five-star recruits that put Ohio State in their top fives. Also, Brian talked to London, Merritt, and Ohio State commit over the weekend. We're going to dive into their conversation. And if Julian Sayin should be the backup quarterback this year as a true freshman. Yeah, it's possible. And Brian and I give our thoughts about that. It's a fun show. A lot of stuff jam-packed in here. Let's not waste any time. Let's bring Brian in. And as you welcome in Brian Smith, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian and I have done a lot of talking about players and guys that are in the class of 2025. We're beginning to turn the page fully and look at guys in the class of 2026, and one of them is a five-star defensive end from Baltimore, Maryland, Zion Elee. Recently released his top five. Ohio State's in that grouping with other elite schools around the country, like you would expect, with him being a five-star prospect. Brian, when you watch Zion Elee, what do you see?
Number one, how about that motor?
Man, it's insane.
He does not care how far he has to run. I can't imagine a coach in America that would be disappointed with that young man's effort. And that's first. Second, the length is what you're looking for. It's kind of like the Matt's kid that got committed, or any other 6'4.5", 6'5" kid that can run like a deer, but it's 220. You know, that size is rare. It's either the kid gets really big or they're really thin. There's not many pure rush ins. This kid is, because he's got the long arms and he's got the foot speed to make guys miss. He's been coached. He's got some pretty good inside moves with the hands. He'll dip the shoulder and go around on speed rush. This is a very, very high level recruit. I didn't even know anything about the high school he's from. It's a little bit northeast of Baltimore, but like, if you're that good, they'll find you. So that's simple as that.
I mean, it's simple. It's true. He went to an Ohio State camp this summer. Larry Johnson saw him, talked to Larry Johnson. He got the offer there. That was, I believe, in the middle of June. And those types of things are very pivotal. But when I watch him and when I think about what he might be down the road, Brian, this is one of those guys that when it comes to the five-star, the elite type of pass rusher, there's been times Ohio State's missed on quite a few of them. There's been times that Ohio State has hit on them. I think this is a time right now where Ohio State can ramp up their recruitment to make sure that they are doing everything they need to do to land this young man from Baltimore.
They've done great in Maryland, and obviously the staff has a lot of history there. In particular, a certain D-line coach that we discuss on this show a lot. He's always recruited the D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore area well, so it's not surprising. They've also made it a priority to get back to a point where Ohio State has depth at DN. I was just honestly just looking at their depth chart, and they got like Caden Curry and some of these guys that are on the depth. They're good players, but like guys like JT ahead of them, it's hard. But they're going to lose like 8 guys minimum off the defense after this year, I would imagine. Some of those guys are going to play, so you got to restock. And they put in the effort to get ahead on the 26 kids too, which also tells me a lot of these guys are invested as coaches to be at Ohio State long-term, because that's the first thing you notice. Recruiting will fall off when guys are leaving. It's not.
What do schools generally do this time of year when you're looking at the recruiting class that's in the next cycle to kind of get ahead of the game?
They should have already been pretty far into it, to be honest,
because
it's changed so much, Jay. Like, if you'd have asked me that 8-10 years ago, my answer would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
I was one of those guys 25 years ago telling people, if you just and coaches hate recruiting by and large. The ones that are good at it are like, there's not a gap, there's a gap. because they enjoy it. That's why they make more money. 80% of college football is recruiting. Never forget that. But if you get in on kids and just build a rapport with the coach, with mom, or whatever the guardian may be, and just have a decent relationship with the kid for a little longer, it pays dividends down the road. It's amazing how many times a school gets a kid that you're like, how did that happen? It's because the coach at the prominent school in that state was lazy. Ohio State is not the underground school, obviously. Wherever they go, it's Ohio State, and they've got guys putting in work. That's why they're having maybe the best class in the country this year, and they're doing well again for the next class. It's effort, brother, that never stops.
One thing Larry Johnson said to Zion Elee when he was at the camp this summer was a comparison to Nick Bosa. And I don't normally kind of compare players in high school to guys that were elite in college. Like, I think there's a gap there that can be kind of stupid to do. But Larry Johnson said that Zion Elee's playing style kind of reminds him of Nick Bosa. That's pretty high praise for a kid who's trying to get on everyone's radar and even go up on the radar there. Do you see similarities between their playing styles?
The thing that comes to mind, like Bosa and his brother.
Yeah.
I mean, those are guys, if they didn't play football, what would they have done? I would wager heavily that they would have went into the armed forces. Like, they're a guy that would be on the wall. Got to be a little different mentality. This kid is similar. Like, again, the effort. They play differently when as soon as the ball, it doesn't matter if it's a runaway, if it's a drop back, it's roll out, they're getting double teamed, they just go all out. Matter of fact, the film, when I was watching Elee, I turned it off on this play. It was a run left, and he was on the right edge. They put two guys on him. He still curled the edge to bring it back inside and pushed him back. That is effort. I mean, he's obviously gifted, don't get me wrong, but that is effort. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Because I already seen the pass rush and stuff, but a lot of rush edge guys, they're not good at this stage because they're not strong enough. He was moving a guy back. He got under his pads, a bigger guy. Didn't matter. Effort wins a lot of plays because especially once you get to Big Ten level, everybody's good. So that's probably something that made a lot of coaches at Ohio State pretty excited. You don't always see that a kid at a sophomore in high school. He's only going to be a junior this fall. So I imagine he'll be a 40 offer kid.
When it comes to this, we've seen a lot between Ohio State and Oregon, and my gut says, even though they could be Ohio State, Oregon, and pick any of the other three in the final grouping there down the road, Ohio State doesn't want to lose these battles with Oregon at all. They're going to lose some. Like, I think it's a reality, but you don't want to lose them at all. Is the NIL piece the one thing that Ohio State can maybe boost, even though you're going up against Phil Knight? But is that one of the pieces there where Ohio State should emphasize the NIL or the development process, or maybe it's the relationships, Brian, because you're very high on those too?
It's ironic that you mentioned that because I was on the Locked On Ducks podcast here recently, and because of Phil, I mean, he is the ultimate booster. He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. And Oregon uses NIL, but two parts here. Number one, at the Under Armour event last year, McClellan flipped from OSU to Oregon. And I asked him off there, I put the phone down. I did a basic interview with him. And I said, okay, what's the real deal here? And we're cussing and cutting up. And I'm like, was it money? Did Oregon buy you, or what was the deal? And he said, no, Ohio State offered me more. And I said, okay, so obvious question. What was the reason? He said, I just had a better relationship with Oregon. And we both know that Ohio State's receiver coach is an elite recruiter. Sometimes you just lose.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we're good. That told me Ohio State's offensive staff is really good at recruiting. You didn't get as much money, and Ohio State's got a better rep at receiver than anybody. That just proves that sometimes you just lose. And like, he was just nonchalant about it. And he's like, yeah, they offered money, but that was like the last thing that came up. It was a relationship at Oregon built. Everybody assumes it's just that, but their staff does a tremendous job. It is, out of all the major programs, no school recruits more out of state than Oregon. I mean, that state is awful for high school football. They're getting kids from Texas, Maryland, Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, everywhere. It's effort. It's odd, by the way, that Ohio State keeps running into Oregon all over the country.
Yeah.
It's been bizarre. Like, the Ohio kid is the most recent. I'm guessing part of that is like Ohio State's secondary is loaded, and Oregon's got some depth there, but I doubt it's as loaded as what the Buckeyes have. Anyway, I've never seen an Oregon kid or Ohio kid go out to Oregon that Ohio State wanted.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I don't even know if they've signed a kid for the state of Ohio in my lifetime. Like, they just don't recruit there. So it's different. And I know a lot of fans will still, like, Ohio State fans are not shy. They won't agree with what I just said. But look, that's like straight information from the player. I don't know what to tell you, but Oregon is here to stay. They're going to be annoying for all programs, Buckeyes included.
This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. We all love things that take the guesswork out of whatever we're doing. If it's buying tickets, if it's shopping, whatever it is, we want things that make our lives easier. And Gametime does that. They got flash deals. They got zone deals. They allow you to get a panoramic view from your seat, and they got that lowest price guarantee as well. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin will get you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron, with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Brian, let's go from Zion Elee, a guy in the class of 2026, go back a little bit to a guy in the class of 2025, and Messiah Delhomme. We've touched on him previously, got to get a deep dive on him as a player. He's committing this weekend. He's from Warwick High School there, and I believe it's Newport, Virginia. I believe that's the area that he's from. Finalist right now in his recruitment, Ohio State, and then the three schools on the East Coast, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Maryland. My gut says, Brian, that, hey, maybe he stays closer to home with three of the four finalists being on that side of the country. But it's Ohio State, and Ohio State outweighs them all.
That one I wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Maryland has had its teeth kicked in that area. DC to the 757, as we call it, Newport News and Hampton and all those areas for a long time, by Ohio State, by Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame. I wonder how much NIL is going to play a factor in this. Ohio State, I have no idea how much they're offering, but I wonder if Maryland, one of those schools, like, this has got to end, because we keep losing them to the same schools. It's been that way my entire life anyway.
Yeah.
But if they're ever going to get over the hump, they got to do that. And Virginia Tech's surging a little bit. If he goes to Virginia, I'll be surprised.
Right.
Like, they're awful. But it is a great school, and it's its home state, so maybe. But Virginia Tech's surging a little bit. Maryland, like, they need to have something going on. That coach is, I don't know if he's going to make it. I'll be interested, but I would not wager on this one iota.
So there's one thing here with his recruitment, him committing this weekend. Ohio State currently has three safeties verbally committed in their 2025 cycle. Yeah, the Buckeyes are going to lose Lathan Ransom and then Jordan Hancock, if you can consider him the nickel corner as a safety. That's two guys are losing this year. So they're replacing two starters. Those guys are probably already on the roster. They got three guys verbally committed. A fourth might be one too many, but if he wants to come to Ohio State that bad and they want him, I can see that happening. But my gut also says they got three. They don't need four.
The only thing with that is if they think somebody can play corner out of that group, or they think that guy is a really good, like nickel, from every coach I talk to and every person that follows football in general, is just a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about Ohio State. Jeremiah's going to play some in the slot this year.
Yeah.
I'm very biased because I know him. I know how big he is. I know what it's like to shake his hand. Good luck to any corner going up against him. But if it's not Jeremiah, it might be worse for you because it might be a tight end. So you got to have a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats there. I almost think you have to plan your DB recruiting. And again, this isn't just Ohio State. Anybody, at least one nickel every year, if not two, because you need a guy that's a linebacker that can cover there, which is almost, there's like 3 of those a year in the country. Good luck. And then you need a safety, and you need at least 2 of those kind of guys, because every formation, when they motion to do different things, that matchup can be really bad.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're looking at the nickel spot differently, because every school approaches it a little differently. And your opponents are like Michigan. Let's be honest. They want to win that game. Michigan puts one of those big tight ends in the slot. DBs, you got to have special players there. So that's my only other guess. But otherwise, I'm like you, 3 is a lot.
Yeah.
So, and they're good, too.
Yes,
It's not like, these guys are just mediocre. Maybe we'll take another. These are really good players. So I wonder if there's something going on there that I don't know about. The other thing, maybe they think somebody might leave the class. So they're just over recruiting for now. That's possible as well.
You said that word special. That's something that you can use to describe Blane Bradford, the class of 2026 guy. He is a safety. I'm going to kind of figure out if you think he's better as a deep safety or a nickel here in a second. 6'1", about 200 pounds, another 5-star kid, released his top 5. He's down there in the Bayou. Of course, LSU's in that group, and Ohio State, and Alabama, and Oregon, and Notre Dame. All schools Ohio State's used to going up against. But once again, Brian, we're talking about a kid down in the deep South that Ohio State's trying to get. It's going to be tough, very, very tough. But I understand Bradford's special when you watch him play.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times. I've met him. He's not a typical kid from the South. He's very well spoken. He goes to Catholic High in Baton Rouge, really, really good school. That's the same high school Travis Minor and Mr. Work Dunn both went to. There's been a lot of kids go to that school, go to LSU. Obviously, it's in the same city, but it's tradition rich. And he is just different mentally.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you meet him, you know, okay, this kid is taken to what adults have told him in general, like the way he speaks, the way he commands attention. And then physically, you're like, he looks like he's 20 years old and he's just going into his junior year. As a physical freak like he is for his age, he's also a guy that can lead and direct. So I wonder if they'd like to keep him at free safety, but you're right. He's 195, 200, something like that. I wonder if he's going to outgrow safety. And maybe he's that guy we're just talking about that can play the hybrid spot. Nobody cares how much of a leader you are if you can play there. All coordinators want that guy.
Yeah.
And the Bradford, you would get both. So, I know Texas was recruiting him too. Like his list is the absolute elite of college football. And he looks at things differently. I wouldn't bet on any one school, but Ohio State's either had him on campus or will. And I know he's a kid that would fit in anywhere. His recruitment will be one of the most fun to follow in the entire 26 class because he is not tied to Baton Rouge. I've been there. I went to school briefly at LSU. He does not fit there like most people do. He could fit in New York, Austin, Texas, Seattle, anywhere. So his recruitment's going to be wild.
You know, it's interesting you say that he's not tied into Baton Rouge like most guys are when they're down in the South. Because you were talking about him saying he's a little bit different. He's taking to what adults have told him. Of course, you talk about Jeremiah Smith all the time. I think about Jeremiah, how Jeremiah is mentally,
that way.
He's mentally different and mentally more mature than the average person. Why do you think, though, that he is not like the other kids in the Deep South?
It's got to be something with his upbringing. Part of it's going to Catholic High. They want those kids to be worldly. Academics are very important. He's a high academic kid, real high. And this the way he presents himself. He's the kind of guy that could be somebody eventually after he runs a small business that goes around to Fortune 500 companies and gets paid to spruce up the sales team to go out somewhere. He's that guy. And people would be like, he's an imposing figure, but very likable, big smile, positive guy. Everybody wants that kid on their roster.
Right.
And the talent, like the way he could run at his size and change direction is obvious too. So I don't know exactly where Blane will end up playing positionally, and it could be multiple spots during his collegiate career. But I can't imagine a coach going, yeah, we can't use that guy. Yeah. I think he will be a plus 40 offer kid, and he will have the opportunity to commit wherever he wants, whenever he wants.
I didn't see this on the film at all, and I was curious if you have a thought about him maybe being a possible returner down the road.
It's possible. I mean, he's smart enough. He's got good hands, and he's the kind of guy you trust. So I honestly think he would be just as likely to be a guy that's a punt block guy because he's so nifty and so incredibly smart. That's, like Ed Reed is like the ultimate punt block guy of all time. He's just, ironically, Ed is from the state of Louisiana. he just kind of knew where to go, and he was a film guy and all that. I could see Blane being that, but that would also help as a return man because he would understand their tendencies and find a hole and get a 50-yarder. So anything he does, I think, would be good. And like you could put him at running back and he would figure it out. So yeah, he's just a good football player.
Brian recently had a chance to talk to an Ohio State commit. He is London Merritt. Brian, every now and then when he's out, he'll message me, say, "Oh, I talked to this kid, talked to that kid," send a picture of them and things like that. London Merritt's already committed, but Brian, what did you gather when you talked to him over the weekend?
I was surprised by a couple of things. And London's another kid that's pretty mature. He was before he went to IMG, he was at Woodward Academy in Atlanta, really good academic school, private institution. They were in the state finals last year. And everybody in the country recruited him too. So it was a very similar situation. Of course, pass rushers are always in desire. But this is a mature kid and all that. I was just like, okay, I figure he's probably going to take at least one visit this fall. I have no idea where, but he's from the Deep South. And he surprised me and he said, no, I'm just going to Ohio State. So I guess he likes Larry in the situation, but I thought Ohio State had the edge in the spring before he committed. But they've done such a good job. I thought that was interesting. And he just talked a lot about Larry and the defense and getting an opportunity to go to Ohio State and kind of a new challenge. And he's just locked in. He's like 245, 250. His body's right where he wants it. It's been about the same since last, I'd say January, December. And now he's just fine tuning. Like this year at IMG is just preparing him for college. He's already to the point he's could have probably contributed this year to Ohio State in some capacity. I know they're deep. He's not going to beat JT out or anything, but mentally, like this is another kid that understands the big picture. That's why he went to IMG. Like he didn't have to do that.
Right.
So I think that's a kid that's got a chance to be a very, very good player for the Buckeyes. And again, the maturity is going to help him. He'll pick up the playbook. He just says all the right things. Maybe I'm just kind of like blinded by some of his answers because I asked the same things from just about every kid. And his answers were different because he's mature. That's really this summation of it. Whether he was talking about Coach Johnson, whether he was talking about the opportunity for the Buckeyes, what's next for him, focusing on the season. Everything is like what's ahead, very, very focused on the task. I'm like, this is not your normal 17-year-old kid. Good for Ohio State.
Very good for Ohio State. Do you see a scenario where he will possibly be a backup that plays in rotation as a freshman?
It's possible because you're going to lose both guys. And I don't know how accurate their depth chart is, and it changes every day. I got their Ohio State depth chart up now. You lose Jack, you lose JT. That's a lot. Caden Curry, maybe Kenyatta, I think would start next year. But you guys like Edric Houston, you got Mitchell Melton. Who's coming back? Does Melton get some of those guys? Do they apply for a 6-year? How much would they want them? And then there's a transfer portal. That's a lot of stuff going on, brother. Physically, yes. Mentally, yes. But it depends on who else is there. So Ohio State is going to take a step back next year at the end, I think. That's a fair statement, but maybe not much. There's still a lot of talent. Now it's just you don't know where it's coming from. You don't have as much film if you're an opponent. So he will have his chance, but I still think at Ohio State, very few freshmen will play up front.
One thing about freshmen that play is that Brian is like me. It's more than likely it's probably not going to happen as a starter. Maybe in rotation, but just depends on the situation. Like sure. Caleb Downs comes in, he's different. Like he's playing. Jeremiah Smith comes in, he's different. He's playing. Julian Sayin transfers in, probably in a different situation. If Will Howard, the Kansas State kid, does not come in, Julian Sayin might be a starter in the first 3 weeks of the season. I don't think it's going to happen. But Brian, I can see him potentially being like the day one backup to Will Howard right away. And I don't say that a lot about true freshmen at all. I think all of them should really just expect a red shirt. But Sayin's different, man. You talk about his accuracy, you talk about his processing. He does things that a lot of quarterbacks don't do and that are 3- and 4-year guys. I know he's young. He's also small. But I can see him being the backup this year at Ohio State.
I think that's a really unique scenario. A couple of things. Number one, he's very accurate. That's obvious. And from everything I've heard, he picked it up pretty quick. And the receivers like him a lot. I'll leave it at that. If they have any issues, and You just don't know how it's going to go in a season because quarterbacks take hits. And Howard will run. He's not afraid. I would not be surprised if he ends up being the backup pretty early. The only thing with that is Ohio State, like every school and their coach, will lie about the depth chart at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Telling the kids that too, because you can't be without depth at quarterback or you get mauled.
Right.
So I don't know how they're going to play it out, but from what I've heard, he's the best passer of the football already at Ohio State. So I think there's a chance he ends up starting a game or two this year if there's an injury, because if they know, like, okay, let's just say high ankle sprain, those take forever.
Mm-hmm.
You can mask something with the backup that's a little older that you're not ready to turn loose with Ohio State because of the play, like Jeremiah and all these guys. But if they have to play a really big game, including the Michigan game, I think you want a passer and you want to lead him into it. I would go with Julian. That's just my opinion. If you lose your starting quarterback early in the year, you may not win it anyway, but Julian's got a higher floor than Will Howard, and he's got a higher ceiling. I think the latter, like, way higher. I think Will Howard can lose you a game. So I'm not as high on Ohio State as some other people because of him, but I actually think that their depth chart is so wild because they got so many talented guys. It could really flip-flop in a lot of directions, but Julian's still the one, from everything I've been told, that's the best. I'll be interested to see how they handle it, because you and I were talking about this off air. They're losing at least one quarterback at the end of this year, in addition to Will Howard.
Yeah.
Minimum. Kids will not wait. They do not go play for Ohio State. They go play for the chance to get to the NFL. Let's not kid ourselves. That's just college football in general now. They're going to lose at least one guy in addition to Howard. And if you put Julian, like, if he earns it, he earns it. I guess it is what it is. But if he passes some of those orders, at least one of them is going to leave. So I guess you were more fortunate to get those guys on campus.
Yeah.
But they have recruited quarterbacks so well, because everyone wants that chance to throw to these receivers. I get it, but they're not going to stick around. So I think it's as fascinating a position battle as there is in the country this year. What's going on in Ohio State's quarterback room?
With this very scenario about Julian Sayin and him possibly being a guy who's a backup at some point, maybe a starter later in the year, leading into some big games down the stretch, that decision alone impacts Tavian St. Clair, who's not on campus yet.
Well, I mean, to a certain degree, like, God forbid, but like, let's say that the starter goes down and it's a broken ankle. Okay, he's done.
Yeah.
And it ends up being Sayin, and he flips the light switch. There's two ways a kid like St. Clair can look at it. Number one, okay, realistically, the chances of me beating out a guy that's a year ahead of me who's already starting at quarterback are about slim and none. Now, most kids always think they're going to start, and that's why kids transfer so fast. It's not realistic. But if you're seeing it there, and from what I've heard about St. Clair, I doubt that he's dumb. He's going to know, okay, I have two options. I can either not go here, or I can go in red shirt, and then, like, my third year, I'm going to be the guy because Sayin's going to turn pro after his third year. As a junior, I'm the starter at Ohio State. That's not a bad gig. Most kids want to start their sophomore year, though, so I don't know. The only thing there is, unlike most of the quarterbacks they get, he's an in-state kid.
Correct.
I'd assume most of the people around him are not only Ohio State fans, they're rabid Ohio State fans.
Yeah.
That's most of the state. How much does that play into it? He committed to Ohio State pretty early. He's from the state. He's national recruit. He's helped this recruiting class. All those things. It would suck for him if Julian ends up getting inserted, but it in some ways it would be better if you found out now instead of in the spring. Like, if Julian wins the job in, like, the first week of April and you're already enrolled. So it's going to be hard. I mean, climbing that depth chart quickly, I don't see how it's going to happen. And he already committed. So I'm guessing he just wants to go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I don't root for Ohio State, but I would be thrilled to see a kid, quote unquote, wait his turn because the other guys are just good as him, but they're ahead of him. We don't see that very often, Jay. I don't care. Pick a school. It's insane.
Yes.
Guys that were diehards their whole life and their dad played at a school would transfer after 6 months. I'm not starting. I'm out of here. It's awful. So I hope St. Clair sticks it out, even if Sayin ends up being the starter for next year, because it's gotten ridiculous. The transfer portal is a joke.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's half the kids transfer. They all think no, you're not ready. Not coaches from coast to coast aren't wrong. That's it. So I hope again that he goes to Ohio State and sticks it out. It'd be a great story.
One thing Brian and I will do down the road, because we're up out of time, we'll talk about Brian's thoughts about what Ohio State will be this season in the future. We'll also touch on the elevated and the higher number of scholarships and how schools should kind of approach that, going from 85 scholarships a year to 105. Should it be an emphasis on high school guys? Should it be more guys in the portal? 2 topics Brian and I will tackle in the future. I appreciate Brian for coming on the show. You can follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. You can follow me on the same platform at jstevens07. Thank you for tapping into Locked On Buckeyes. We'll see you next time.